Okie dokie. Hopefully we're going out live, which is going to be good. Let's just check that everything's working before myself and my good friend Kat start nattering away. And we do love a natter, don't we, Kat? Let's have a look. Let's just make sure that everything is working. There we go. There we go. Okay, cool. I think we're good. We've got people joining us. Excellent. Let's go settle. Go settle. Good girl. We've got people joining. Okay, good. Excellent. Okay, we'll give it a moment. So welcome to day 2 of the Relabelling Reactivity. Oh, mind you, you're not that over. Go settle. Oh, you're not that over. 1 second. Let me just unravel the dog. Go settle. Good girl. So day 2 of the Relabelling Reactivity Deep Dive. And today we're going to be talking to people are struggling in. Good. All right, good. So welcome day 2 of the relay. Oh, hi Deb. Deb's joined us. Excellent. The day 2 of the Relabelling Reactivity Deep Dive 2024. So really excited. Yesterday, I did my live and I talked about the 5 causes of reactivity, or the 5 core things that are common causes of reactivity. So that was education and understanding, physical, relationship and trauma, genetics, and appropriate or inappropriate socialization. So all those things can be contributing factors to reactivity. The one that we're going to really focus in on, I've got my good friend Kat Franz, who I'm going to formally introduce shortly, is about relationship and trauma between the owner and the dog. And we're going to delve into that in tonight's live. So we're waiting for people to join, whether it be on Facebook, on YouTube. Let people trickle in, and hopefully we'll have more people joining us on the live session. So some of you may have met Kat before, either on social media, if you follow her on social media, or via, obviously, she's an Obedience Fanatics member, and she's one of the team on Relabelling Reactivity. Kat is the founder and CEO of Movement for Modern Life, an online yoga platform, which is fantastic. We've had a similar journey into the world of online training, and it's gone on to be incredibly successful, won numerous awards, and it's very much Kat's baby and her brainchild. So super proud to have Kat part of the team, and also to share her knowledge and insight into this area specifically, which is reactivity, and more importantly, how the owner's mental state, their physical state, their thinking patterns can help or hinder their dog's confidence and reactivity. Welcome, Kat. Thank you very much for joining. How are you keeping?
I'm very well. Thank you very much for that lovely intro. It's very kind of you. And I'm really, really glad to see everybody tonight. Yeah. It's really, really lovely opportunity. And thank you for the opportunity of asking. Share my thoughts on this.
My pleasure. So Kat obviously is going to do a talk specifically aimed on the human aspect of Relabelling Reactivity. She's one of the members of the team. She's contributed to the Relabelling Reactivity course and put some great, amazing content to help owners of dogs that are struggling with reactivity. So whilst people are we give it a moment, people are joining us, share some of your experiences of what you've gone through with your dogs. If you have a reactive dog, what do you feel? What goes through your mind? Share some of that in the chat and let us know what you're thinking.
I'm gonna share a little bit about my background, first of all, for the folks who don't quite haven't sort of connect the dots. So I'm passionate about dog training, obviously, as we all are, and Australian Shepherds in particular is my chosen breed of the moment. And I love obedience, has been my sort of sport, and I'm now doing IGP as well. And what my background is, work-wise and life-wise, is, well, for 30 years, I've practiced yoga. So since I was, who'd have thought 30 years? Since I was 18, has Kamal disappeared? I'm sure he's somewhere. So since I was 18, I have practiced yoga. And so it's been my practice. I founded Movement for Modern Life 10 years ago, which is the UK's online yoga platform. And it's full of the best yoga and mindfulness teachers. And what I wanted to talk about is the human effect on our dogs, because of course our dogs don't operate in a vacuum of their own. They are very sensitive to our emotions. even more sensitive than other people, and they often, as you'll probably know what we're thinking before we know it ourselves. And so I think that it's important to realize that often it's our own transmissions, let's say, it's our own communications to the dog. And that might be very subtle communication, which is actually informing their response. Because dogs have obviously, as Kamal said, grown up alongside us for millennia, I think now. And they are incredibly good at intuiting how we are and responding to that. They respond perfectly. So I always think that in terms of training, competition, out and about, the dogs are normally, often mirroring us. So my talk today was going to be it's going to be about reactivity in people, in us. And it's about moving from being reactive to being responsible. So we want to be able to respond in the moment instead of reactive. And it's interesting, of course, because here we are talking about the dog's reactivity. But for most of us, in fact, I'll go as far as to say all of us, we often operate on a reactive basis rather than truly being able to respond in the moment. And what does that mean? Well, being reactive is about not necessarily being able to have our own real conscious and chosen thoughts and behaviors. So that might be having an instinctive response, having a trigger response. And I'm going to give you an example of my trigger responses, because I'm not going to say that I'm above this. No. This is my practice. It's been my practice for 30 years. But my gosh, is it a practice? And you realize this, for example, with your parents. They tend to take us back, just as we feel that we are enlightened beings. Then we spend time with our parents and we realize that we are very much mere mortals. So the trigger, the way that I react around my parents, is often coming from a very emotive place. It comes from something in my chest I can feel constricting. And I will know then this reaction, but of course I can't think of it because it's all just happening and I'm feeling very triggered, and in dogs we'd say aroused at that moment. And I will then lash out and give a response. And that is reactivity. And I think often us humans respond from a reactive place. And that's okay, because our brains have been formulated to react and in that way. If there's a tiger, we don't want to be being thoughtful and taking a moment to pause. What should I do next? No, we need to run. It's our amygdala is the old part of our brain, and that's the part which responds to scary, fearful situations. So it's okay to be reactive, and often it will see us out of danger. So there will be situations in your life where you will need to be reactive. But when you are with your dog and when you are trying to respond in a responsible way, that's a time where you need to have a practice which can override this reactivity. And ultimately, I actually think it's a very similar reactivity to the reactivity that we are training our dogs against. So if we can train our dogs and understand their behavior, I think we slightly owe it to them to at least practice conscious awareness or mindfulness around our own reactivity. And that is a really hard thing to do, to be honest. So it's that thing of, are you able to respond to every situation and not react? And are you really in control of your own mind and your own emotion? So you'll have heard when I was talking about my mother, the thing which I said my parents, my mother, well, the thing which I really am aware of is this rising constriction in my chest. And that, interestingly, is where our thoughts are coming from. Our thoughts come from our body. They come from somatic experiences. And often we don't sort of think that. We think everything's in our brain, and it's really not. It's already there in our bodies. So is feeling believing. And do you even believe your own emotions? When you feel your emotions, it's very often easy to take that as the truth. I am angry. I am frustrated. Yes, you say, I am this person. But actually, are you really that person? Because the interesting thing is the body feels a thing. So the body will feel, say, tightness, constriction, or cortisol levels rising, which is stress response, arousal. And once the body feels that thing, the signal then travels to the brain to tell it. And that is the body-mind connection. When you hear people talking about it, that's what it is. So in fact, the body comes first. So if we can look after and learn to monitor our somatic, our lived body experience, that's a great start to learning to how to handle the emotion that arises, because it all arises in our body. So that's a really interesting, I hope, jump off point for you to start exploring in yourself. Is next time you feel a strong feeling, how does this make my body feel? How do I feel when I talk about this? And this sort of self-inquiry, I think, is going to be crucial for us all to move from this state of reactivity to being responsible. Because only when we are able to know ourselves, to know the triggers that create those reactions in our body, only then will we start to really know what we are going to do next, and therefore what we can do about it. We can second guess ourselves just in the same way that we learn to second guess our dog's behavior. We'll see, oh, okay, firm stare, fixed eyes, we know what's going to happen next. So we intervene on that moment. Same with us. We can notice the signals in the body. Okay. Feeling palpitations in the heart, feeling worried, feeling constricted. And then you can take that breath, and then you can intervene. But it's the body telling the mind about our emotions, which is very interesting, I think. And then what the mind does with those emotions, well, the mind goes on some kind of absolute, as you'll know, the mind goes on an absolute field day with those emotions. So we'll be feeling, for example, back to my poor parents, I'll feel this constriction. I'll tense. I'll think, doing that thing. And then my mind will have a massive story about it. Oh, she always does this in this kind of situation. See, I'm right because da 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 da. And look at this. I can't believe that she's doing this thing, which is really bugging me, and it always has. Doesn't she realize? Oh, if only she'd listened to me. So then the story begins. And the story in our brain is the thing that then becomes in charge of the emotions, and that then feeds back down to the body. So basically it becomes a loop. Scientists did this really interesting experiment, which is they found that an emotion, a raw emotion, actually can only last for 90 seconds, which is fascinating. And I know many of us humans can keep our emotions for a lot longer than 90 seconds. In fact, many of us manage to hold a grudge for a lifetime. We manage to hold on to our anger. We manage to hold on to all the upset. Many of us throughout our lives, and it can really taint our interactions with others and with our dogs, of course. So once we can learn to become freer of this connection and aware of the stories that are in our head that are now feeding the emotion that we originally felt, then we become aware, oh, okay, hold on, this is a choice. I am now making a choice to talk about this story. And really that conscious awareness, when you catch yourself aware, oh, I'm now making a story about, say, always, well, here's a common story. It's like, that, oh, don't worry, he's friendly, as the massive whatever goes charging up to your dogs. And you're like, oh, here we go. And you get a whole thing in your head and you become angry about it. And you can really become quite reactive in that situation towards the owner. And of course, then your reactivity is going to really impact the dog. Well, if we become aware that that raw feeling of tension about this dog is actually a very, very tiny feeling on a very tiny defined period of time, the rest of it is a story in your head. And that moment where you realize that and you're able to create a distance. So here's the practice. It's creating a distance between the emotion and the reaction. So in yoga, my language, we call it the sacred pause. And people will say, take a breath. Yes, that's a sacred pause. Anything that gives us distance between that one event and the thing happening is a sacred pause, because it gives us the ability to control what is going to happen next. And then we've got choices about what we do next. And the choices are basically, do I want to feel better about myself and vent at this human being who's let their dog charge up to my dog? And then you think, well, what will the impact be of my dog if I vent? And you know that if you're venting, it's only you having fun venting. It's not actually you making a difference. Option 2 is you can actually choose to make a difference, and you can choose to talk mindfully in a way which might alter that person's behavior, and it might change your dog's behavior. So that's your choice moment. And really that point of responsibility is about that choice moment. So it's knowing that it's feeling, that is believing as humans. And it's knowing that we have a choice over that. So it's the story which can dictate our lives and can ruin our lives. And we think, well, what are the things which are running the scripts in our head? Because we've all got these scripts. And of course, our childhood experiences will be a big part, but also, as the phrase is the very water that we're swimming in. So our culture will be a massive part of the story that's in our head, which will be impacting our relationship and our connection with our dogs. And you might think, how is that true? Well, the biggest problem, I think, in my experience with this culture, is that it gives us a basic, I'm not okay, something needs to be fixed about us. We feel that we're not okay. We don't accept ourselves. Reason being, well, at school, we always needed, must try harder, must do better, must be prettier, must be thinner. And obviously that's only for people in the dominant culture. If you're, if you're non-white, if you're from different backgrounds, women also will have very different experiences. of not being okay, of not being good enough. And the trouble is we really internalize those not good enough stories. And often we even pass them on to our dogs. And I hear people talking about their lousy dogs and their dogs who are doing X, Y, Z, and they're bemoaning the dog's characters. And I think you're just in the same trance of unworthiness for your dog as you are for yourself. And that's how that's how people talk to themselves. That's how we all talk to ourselves. Like, we can all take a moment and think about the stories that we tell ourselves. Like, if you were to think back to a moment of when you were very young and just imagine, you're with your caregivers, your parents, whoever, how is it that you remember being talked to? And maybe it wasn't, you are completely accepted, you are completely loved, no matter what you do, you are perfect. Maybe it wasn't that message all the time, because that's the culture that we're all in. And the trouble with our feelings of unworthiness is it all gives us this level of reactivity. I'm aware that this is probably getting, well, I'm saying it's getting deep. Of course it's deep. This is what we do. This is the work. And really what I'm saying to you is that the message of the hero of like, yeah, I'm self-made, I can do this on my own, I can work this out, it's all internalized. And then we all feel shit when it doesn't work out like that. And that's not okay. Not okay for us. Because if we don't have that level of compassion and acceptance towards ourselves, there's no way that we'll be able to be present to react and respond to our dogs and to everybody else. So it's being able to accept ourselves as we are in this moment, to be present and see reality afresh, right in this present moment. And there are so many practices which I'd recommend for becoming more aware, becoming aware of what your internal chat might be, what your default modes are, then what some of the scripts are that are going through your head, some of your maybe the ways in which you feel not worthy, not enough. And then maybe having those moments to try and feel, okay, how can I take this sacred pause? How can I take this moment and listen to what my body is telling me right now? Because if you listen to your body in that moment, you will be able to have a much better response. You will become responsible. But I would suggest, and this is the very last thing I'm going to say, I would suggest you practice this in a moment which you're not under arousal, in arousal. So, hello, Kamal, you're back. I felt very lonely. So it's practicing those moments when you aren't worried about the dog launching at your pack. It's having a practice and having those defaults that okay, I can now rely on this. And everybody's different as to the practice that will work. Some people it's meditation, some people it's mindfulness, some people it's yoga, some people it's martial arts, some people it's gardening, whatever it is that helps you to know yourself and to know your body, so you know the messages your body is telling your mind and you don't have to believe that story.
Great. Quite so many things to expand on and definitely is obviously reading through the chat is definitely resonating with people listening. So sometimes the work with reactive dogs can be quite introspective. And I think when Kat talked about, it can be quite deep. I think that's the bit that often isn't discussed or openly or candidly. We focus so much about resolving the dog's behavior, the lunging behavior. We teach him pattern behaviors. We do desensitization. we do counter conditioning. And for me, when I first created Relabelling Reactivity, the biggest chunk of work that I felt wasn't addressed openly in the open conversation was supporting the owner, providing a safe space for the owner to vent, to share their tales of frustration, to share their successes, to be celebrated in the small things that nobody else would acknowledge. You know, my dog walked past the gate and didn't bark, which for other people they would just go, oh, what's the big deal? But when you're in the trenches of trying to overcome a challenge with a dog that has reactivity, that is something to be celebrated. And I think that's why I felt having somebody in Kat's position or Kat's background was such a valid asset. We're going to be hearing from Angela Watson again, another expert in her field, talking about, again, having about how we can change our mindset. So some things that I just wanted to expand on and draw on, Kat, and you touched on quite, you know, how some of the times the dog's behavior can be often or it is a reflection of stuff actually that's quite personal to us. And it's about doing the work on self to really analyze what is the connection. So for example, you know, if you're a person, and it's really interesting reading through some of the comments, who is aware of other people's opinion of you and your dog. You know, I like the phrase that what other people think of me is none of my business. And I think that's a really, really good one, just to remind people to say, you know, again, we live in a world of social media, you know, about judgment of others, you know, having to conform to a standard, having the perfect dog, having the perfect appearance. And certainly when it comes to dogs' behavior, one of the common things that you hear is that they feel that people are judging them for that. So how do you know, how can people begin to move forward from that and to change that that narrative in their head, should we say?
Yeah, that's such a cool question, because actually the judgments that we fear that other people are having are likely the same judgments we're having of ourselves. So it's normally a reflection. If we were slightly less judgmental and slightly kinder to ourselves, likelihood we would feel that the world is kinder and that we wouldn't be so worried. And it is that thing, what I'm very against, and people who sort of know my social and stuff will know it, is that what I'm very against is what I will sort of call toxic numbing, toxic, just...
Oh, I took issue with that, toxic numbing.
Yeah, toxic distractions.
Yeah.
Where we're just we're like, no, I'm fine, it's all good.
Yeah.
Where actually, no, it's not all good, and it's okay to not be all good. And that's why your group is so special, because it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we move through it, and then we learn, and then we move on. But having that acknowledgement of the realness of our emotions at that point, because feeling that we are able to hear ourselves, that we take ourselves seriously, is the most important thing. And then other people will as well. My favorite phrase is Darwin brought on the phrase survival of the fittest, but actually it's survival of the nurtured. And it's nurturing ourselves as well as each other. So I think if we are worried about other people's judgments, we should do whatever you like. The should is such a, yeah, I think Angela will probably cover that. But what we can do as one option is to take a look inside ourselves, and what self-talk are we giving ourselves? And are we really being kind to ourselves in the way that we approach our own foibles? We all have foibles, and that's fine.
Yeah, it's part of the human experience, Kat, isn't it? You know, we are a product of, you know, the things that have happened to us. It's all about individual journeys. And I think sometimes what happens with dogs that have reactivity challenges, we bring that stuff into that relationship, because that's what happens it's the same in any relationship, parenting and a child, you know, your work relationships, your marital, your spouse, etc. It's all a reflection of what we think of ourselves. And if we want to see a different outcome, we have to first look internally. What is it that we think of ourselves? Do we think that we're capable? Do we think that we are skilled? Do we think that we're able. And working on that mindset, my biggest thing that I always urge my students, as Kat will tell you, is to work on your inner belief. If you don't have that inner belief that you can deal with the situation, and sometimes it might be a case of being honest and going, actually, I need to have more skills in a certain area. I need to have more awareness of body language. I need to develop my timing. Those are the technical things. But the first thing is you have to believe in your heart of hearts, in your gut, that you absolutely can overcome. And as Kat said, taking that moment, and if your instinctive response is to react in a way to the person with the out of control dog, or the person giving you verbal abuse, or the person judging you, take that moment and choose a different path. I'm just going to share some of the comments because it's really, really obviously it's resonating with people. So Debbie B said, when my dog reacts, I feel embarrassed, frustrated, stressed. I tend to visualize him reacting instead of visualizing a calm response for him. The tension goes right down the lead. And it's the other thing she followed up by saying was, I feel I'm being judged by the people around. And Jane also echoed that. And I think that's something that so many people fall foul to, the judgment of others. And I think, again, that can often stem from told about ourselves, what we've been conditioned to believe of ourselves, and so forth. That you're not good enough, you're not worthy, etc. And trying to aspire to having the perfect dog that loves everybody and loves everything, and it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. And the thing to say is to liberate yourself and free yourself from the burden of trying to aspire to having a perfect dog, because they just don't exist. What are your thoughts on that, Kat, when people are really heavy and tough on themselves?
I think people, I think those folks being really hard on themselves and hard on themselves for feeling stressed. And it's okay to feel stressed. It's okay to feel anxious, because sometimes there is something really to feel anxious about, and that's okay. And I think just having that level maybe of acceptance around, you know what, I'm a vulnerable human and my shit's not perfect. That's fine. Sometimes my dog growls and it's annoying, but that's all it is. And you know what? If I can just maybe explain, oh, would you mind not letting your dog run over because, mine doesn't really like that kind of dog. That would be, if we can do that kind of level of interaction with the knowledge that we're imperfect and that's fine. I think that's a nice start for confidence, for feeling compassionate towards ourselves and then to others. Because if we're not feeling compassionate to ourselves, we're probably then not feeling compassionate to the dog. We're thinking, what's a little fucking asshole doing down there? And then that's where there's an escalation between us, rather than, Pooch has got issues. He likes his space. What are we going to do?
Because there's so much dog training that we can do to build the dog's confidence, but it's really, really critically important. And that's what I love about the Relabelling Reactivity community, is they're so dedicated to their dogs. And as a result of their dedication to their dogs, they're actually being dedicated to themselves. And you can see even their confidence growing, them, achieving things that they didn't believe was possible. And that, to me, is the real power of a community where you are supported and not judged. Like, we have days when people will vent and put out their deepest emotions about their dog's behavior, and they get support and they get acknowledgement and they get a safe space to vent. And then we gather around them and we say, okay, how are we going to move forward? How are we going to grow from this? And then you find a follow-up post where they go, actually, what I did, I reflected on that moment. I learned from that experience. I'm now going to change that path that I walk. And it's absolutely fantastic.
Oh, nice. That's what it's about.
Absolutely. Jane said, I leave the house on edge, and I know Shilly reacts to dogs, people, and cats. I try to avoid all the above, but when we do see people, I definitely feel judged. So I think judgment is such a common thing that can be the underlying cause of anxiety that can create the anxiety loop I talked about yesterday, where the dog may feel anxious about a situation, and because of your dog's behavior, you subsequently feel anxious, which then creates more anxiety within the dog, and you're now both on a downward spiral, where neither are in a position to, in that moment, come off that downward trajectory. What can people start to do, Kat? Practical things that they can do. So I'm over the park, I've got my dog out, and I see another dog, which my dog has some reactivity challenges. and I see another person with a dog charging over to me, what can I do practically?
So like I say, I would start a practice which is in the quiet of my own home with a cup of tea, because it's really hard to practice anything. It would like be saying, right, I'm going to train my dog for pre-beginners in the ticket ring. It's like, oh, that would be hard. So we take it nice and simple, which is why we start to practice at home, maybe 5 minutes every morning of just focusing on your breath, because it sounds really stupid. It sounds like it might be a waste of time to just spend 5 minutes focusing on the inhales and the exhales. But what that does do is it gives your mind somewhere to go, that when something else happens, it's like, oh, okay, we can do this. We can breathe and it's fine. It just gives you that sort of instinctive habit type response. So what I would suggest in that moment would be to attempt to breathe, because that will be the thing that gives you the space to know that you have got tools, you do know what you're doing, you are a member of a group, you're being proactive about the training. You can maybe come up with a pat line for the owner, so that you have some lines stored up so you know what to say. And I often sort of sample different lines. And I don't know, maybe other people do this. You kind of sample how things go down with the dog population. So that sometimes you will feel that response didn't go down well, but that's okay, because that's their business. So long as you sort of kept your shit pretty cool, and your dog, most importantly, you were able to focus on your dog because you'd taken that breath. Your dog was able to sort of be supported in that moment in the way that they needed to be. Then that, I think, is the key thing. So the judgment of the other person, I think your feelings of the judgment might start to dissipate once you have slightly less judgment to yourself, and once you're able to take that breath and create some space, and you know that you're being your dog's ambassador, and that you know that you have a line which you can just trot out to the owner, which is, maybe it's sort of something which is palatable to people, which isn't necessarily the truth. Which is like, my dog just goes for all other dogs. It's like, oh, he's had a bad experience. You wouldn't mind if you put yours on a lead, thanks. Something like that. So you feel that you have some armor on, so you know what to do in this situation.
My favorite one in that instance is, oh, he's recently had an eye infection. It's really super contagious. And you find that gets the insights of different listens and different response. So again, great advice from Kat. And I'm just going to read through some more of these comments. So Liz says, I'm trying to think how I can control my dog whilst keeping myself and the dog safe, whilst worrying about what the other people around are thinking. And that's such a common narrative. You're trying to almost firefight. You're trying to put out one fire and there's another one going, and then you're trying to deal with a third, and etc. Again, take that breath, take that pause, just to, okay, what can I deal with? And people are so fixated on trying to focus on the other person's dog. How do I stop the other dog? Don't concern yourself with the other dog. Concern yourself with you, concern yourself with your dog. Think about creating distance. If there's an item around, move behind it, use a natural barrier, use tactics that you have learnt to navigate out the situation. Move your dog to the opposite side, put it into the middle position, turn your back, walk away. It's first and foremost, it's developing your confidence and skill set, so you have many tools to draw on in those situations. Practicing those away from the heat of the moment, so to speak. It's a bit like, when I was in law enforcement, you're not going to practice, the techniques that you would use in a volatile situation in the heat of the moment. You would do them slowly and monotonously, so they become, second nature. And then when you were in a situation that was more contentious, you could draw on that skill set. Hopefully that's the hope. And that's the thing that I urge everybody to first practice: switching sides from your dog, putting the dog into middle, practice those little drills just as training exercises. Practice in the mirror, rehearsing those stock phrases. Oh, thank you. Could you just get your dog? My dog's a bit concerned about other dogs, or my dog's just had practice them at home. And you might feel a bit self-conscious at first, But what you're doing is you're giving yourself the best chance of navigating those situations when things might escalate, and then coming away with it, not only feeling empowered, but building your own confidence. Any thoughts, Kat?
Yeah, definitely. All of those things. And I think also when we are busy really focusing on our dog, there's actually no time to be thinking about what the other person is feeling right there. And they may have, you know, you might catch, I sometimes catch in the corner of my eye a grumpy face. And it's like, oh, well, didn't have their Weetabix. Yeah. What can you do?
Yeah. Yeah. Vicky, let me have a look. So Vicky said, you are so right. I got out thinking the worst, and I'm a crap guardian, and I'm always expect the worst. I got out thinking the worst, I should say. So again, that's something to really take on. Why do you ask yourself the question, why do I think that of myself? Because if that's what I think of myself, that's the energy that's going to be put out, and that's inevitably what I'm going to be receiving. So the first thing is to work on what is the narrative that you tell yourself. Start to realize and recognize, where does that come from, and as Kat said, in your body, and also where does that stem from, and do the work of addressing, you know what, I'm doing the best I can with the information I have in the situation I'm in. And as you know, as they say, when you know better, you'll do better. Be kind to yourself. That's the thing that I find so frequent and so prevalent with people with reactive dogs. They're just so hard on themselves. They are so hard on themselves. And I think, you know, if people are kinder to themselves, that will actually inadvertently change the reaction, I think, from other people as well. So anybody else? Okay, Nikki asked, my biggest worry is not what other people think, but what it is doing to my dog. I really don't want them to put in a situation that they can't cope with. That is when I start to worry. So certainly on that, there is always going to be the potential in any situation, any environment where, you know, a dog could turn up, a meteorite could hop from the sky, etc. I mean, I'll just tell you one, just because it's Kat on the live. Kat, years ago, Kat came for a lesson when I lived in East London.
Oh, yes. Oh, the story.
Yeah. So Kat came for a lesson in East London with
Starsky. It was my first Aussie. No, my second Aussie, Starsky, way years ago.
So she came over where I used to train, which is in a leisure centre at the front. And we were training. We'd finished our training. We were walking back to Kat's car. Kat's got her dog, I think, off the lead. And out of nowhere comes a bull breed of sorts, just tanking around the corner from the main road into the leisure centre. And he just goes bam and runs straight into Kat's dog. I don't think I really broke conversation. I just grabbed the harness, picked it up, and then the dog was shortly followed by two somewhat intoxicated people who were debating why the dog should be left off the load. They knew that he had a problem, etc., etc. And I just very graciously gave them back the dog. They clicked on the lead and went off and carried on in the conversation as if nothing. Kat at this point is white as a sheet and wondering, oh my God, what the hell's happened? And it just, in that moment, it just dawned on me, you kind of go, there's no point in that moment, me giving them, reacting to them. The situation has happened. Deal with it in that moment. Obviously, I have a level of experience, because it wouldn't have helped Kat or the dog if I had gone, blah, 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 your dog should be X, Y, and Z. That would have just escalated the situation, and nobody's going to gain from it. Kat's dog was fine. The other dog was, obviously, the situation was navigated. And then it's not a case of now we're never going to frequent that location again. It just means that, okay, let's be aware of the position. We might go further.
It was for me, actually, Kamal.
But you know what?
Three decisions that day. First decision, I'm never going there again. You are going to be my trainer. That cemented it. It was like 12 years ago. That cemented the deal. You had no option from that point. Like, I want to do that.
But the thing to say is, it's there is always the possibility of something happening. But living in a state of fear and, I can't because at the risk, for me, that's not a healthy way of existing. If you allow those thoughts to consume you, and that can often be a narrative you've told, that's what you see. A lot of people that have been conditioned, whether it be something they've told or created, or apprehensions been almost built into their psyche. Oh, don't do that, you might get hurt. Or don't do that. Or, oh no, don't do that. Or don't. Oh no, don't touch that. that becomes part of it. And then they look at the world in a way that everything is a potential risk. Whereas, my feeling about it is, to reframe that in your mind. Look at not necessarily what could go wrong, but look at the possibility of what could go right. You know what, and start to, if it's a practical thing that you can do, start to log it and put it on a calendar, all the good days that you have, and then put it in a prominent place in your home. So every morning when you get up and go to the fridge, you get a massive influx of dopamine from seeing these calendar filled with, bright yellow markers, which is telling you you've had good days. I urge that as well for people that have reactive dogs. Start to notice the good days. And it's not to say that you're not going to get a dip. And dips are inevitable. Dips are part of the process. But if you focus so heavily and so intently on the things that go wrong, you're never going to see what could go right. What's your take on it, Kat?
Yeah, my take on it is, I mean, I see it a tiny bit differently. Is I manage situations, and I manage, because I know that there are certain breeds of dog which spark my dogs off, for example. And if I see one of those, I just launch off in the other direction.
Absolutely.
And so as a result, I haven't actually had any altercations I think since that one. But I think it's that
because you're being responsible versus you aren't existing in a place of fear. You're just going, okay, I'm assessing that individual situation. I'm going to take.
I'm going to take myself away from it. Yeah, absolutely. So I know the kinds of dogs my dogs are fine with, and I'll really relish and I really enjoy those good interactions with the dogs where I can natter to the random owner. That's fine. But yeah, where there's a dog which I'm not confident about, I just won't test it. Never.
Yeah. What's the point? Yeah. What's the point? But then that's not a case of you don't go out of your house going, oh, I may see that dog. You go out your house, and then when you see the dog, you just make decisions based on that. It's not preempting what hasn't happened, I think, is the key takeaway. So since my dog, so Debbie B, since my dog's issues happen at agility trials, I know the judgment is real. Not from everybody, but definitely a select few. Makes me always dread trialing and training my dog. So there's a couple of things to talk to on that point. First and foremost, we do have to be honest with ourselves if we have a dog with a challenge and ask ourselves those questions. What is the core root? Is it education and understanding? Is the dog got a genetic predisposition to behavior that could be deemed reactive? Has it been socialized? Is there something in its adolescence that's caused it to have an issue? Is there things that we can do that to train the dog and teach the dog to behave in an alternative manner? So, for example, agility is a really good example, environment to really talk on this point. If my dog is motion sensitive, I know there's going to be triggers in that environment that I need to put extra additional training and education in to allow it to navigate that environment in a way that's socially acceptable. That means training for some dogs incompatible behaviors. My border collie needs to understand when something's fast moving in front of you, you cannot pursue that unless given permission. If the fast moving thing is me, game on. If the fast moving thing is another dog or another person's dog, know what you have to do is remain in the bed or remain in a certain position, etc. So it's really important that we first are truthful with ourselves of asking ourselves, have I educated my dog about what I require of them in this environment? If we've done that and we have done our due diligence and we're managing our dog's behavior, we've taught our dogs sufficiently, and people have judgment on us for whatever reason, I don't know, the color of your t-shirt, the way your haircut is, etc. We have to put that in the what they think of us is none of my business category. Yeah, if we're doing the best that you can, but there is a line to be walked between being truthful with ourselves and also understanding that in any dog training conversation or dog behavior conversation, there is competing powers at play. There is the needs of the dog, there's the needs of the owner, and there's the needs of society. And all of those things have shifting roles and shifting amounts of power attached to them. Sometimes it's the dog's need that needs to be put at the forefront of the conversation. Other times it's the owner's needs that needs to be put at the forefront of the conversation. Other times it's society's needs that we need to consider. And it's always a balancing act between finding what is appropriate for all three entities that we as an individual are comfortable with, the dog is able to function and flourish, and society is happy and comfortable. And there is always that competing entity. Any thoughts, Kat, on that one?
Yeah, I mean, exactly that. And I think if you're managing your dog, as Kamal says, in the best way that you can, maybe if you see somebody who's sort of giving you devil eyes, very obviously, I'm one for talking the truth and just say, hey, are you worried about my dog approaching your dog? Because don't worry, I'm doing X, Y, Z, and he won't approach him, or whatever, or tell me what your concerns are. So yeah, just being sort of a little bit upfront with the people might actually help, and then it will maybe improve connections and make you feel good about the training environment.
Absolutely, yeah. And the other thing that I think often happens is we think what the other person is thinking, so to speak. So there's a lot of things in that we think that the other person is looking at us with judgment. Actually, the other person is looking at us and wondering or inquisitive or questioning, or maybe they've got the same experience with their dog and they're looking at you with intent and focus because they're trying to learn from you don't always know. It could be that they're saying, oh, I think that's inappropriate, etc., etc. That's on them. And often what happens is people project what their emotions and their feeling on others. So it might be that you're in the midst of improving your dog's behavior. That is something that may currently elude them. And because it's elusive to them, they might then think, oh, if I can't do it, then you, and that's the thing to say in those situations, is lead by example. Rather than getting a dialogue about, what you are doing, show people, illustrate to people. And that's why I urge people in the Relabelling Reactivity community to do. Don't get into the dialogues, don't get into the social media discussions, show people, demonstrate to them how brilliant your dog is, how well trained your dog is, how focused your dog is. Show the world how brilliant your relationship is. Talk to people about how much, investment you've made into your training, your dedication, your knowledge to enhance your dog's life. Talk about all the things that you're doing with your dog to expand its world, because that's really what we should be focusing on, not necessarily on the negatives of the conversation. So I don't know if anybody's got any questions for Kat on this conversation before we think of wrapping things up. I know there's been lots of great comments. That's a good one. I like that one. So itinerant chemist. I might not be being judged. I have resting bitch face. I think absolutely that's something that several people can. I get that all of the time. Not necessarily resting bitch face, but people always say, "Oh, Kamal, you're really unapproachable and always very serious." Certainly at competitions, and it's not that it's just that I'm focused on what I'm doing on that day. So I appear to be dismissive, and or that's what people interpret of me. But those that know me know that's nothing could be further from the truth. I love a good gas and a chin wag and nattering away, etc. And if I'm focused in my competing mode, it's not that I don't want to be approached full stop. Just give me the moment to do what I have to do, and then by all means, collar me afterwards, and I'll talk to you about the price of fish. It's not a problem. But again, it's about putting our stuff on other people. So Bernadette asked, how do you manage your emotions as trigger points, like gateways, etc.? No other people, but knowing your dog is going to kick off, would you just walk somewhere different? Any thoughts on that, Kat?
Yeah, I think it's exactly as Kamal said. It's not practicing your emotions at that trigger point. It's practicing learning how to manage your emotions in everyday life when other things are coming up. It's maybe noticing. It's a noticing sort of practice. It's a practice of presence. It's a practice of being conscious of how your body is feeling and the emotions that you're having at different points in the day as different things are arising. So, for example, you could just be sitting at work, say at your desk, or an email comes up and suddenly, we sometimes get that, sort of feeling of constriction, anger, and then it's like, instead of just maybe immediately responding to that, having that moment of like, oh, okay, I feel how I'm feeling about that. And just sort of have a laugh with yourself and check in with yourself when these little things are happening, so that you're not practicing at the difficult moment, which is at the gate where there will be an issue. So yeah, I'd practice it first of all in the quiet in the morning, just a check-in with yourself, getting to know yourself better, so that you can start to manage, look at your emotions, and have a little bit of control over how you're feeling. But yeah, definitely practicing on emails, practicing on difficult family members. They can be really good for bringing up.
Yeah. Because the thing to say about the feelings and the emotions that you're going to be feeling when dealing with your reactive dog they are often, more times than not just uniquely attached to the dog. They will be rehearsed in other parts of your life. The key thing, and I think that's the biggest takeaway, certainly for me, is to recognize the same feelings when you have the email about a meeting, or you have an appointment, or you are in traffic, and you recognize that feeling bubbling up to the surface, and learn where does it come from, which part of your body, and doing the due diligence on working on practicing alternative responses. Great conversation, Kat. We could obviously go on and on. Thank you very much for your time. Obviously, Kat is one of the team on Relabelling Reactivity. She also has her online yoga platform, Movement for Modern Life. Check it out. Fantastic online platform. It's so incomprehensive. The other thing that Kat's got going on is really exciting. If you are a dog sport competitor, or if you just want to understand more on mental management, Kat has got a webinar, which is, when is it, Kat? Just share the details of that.
Yeah, that's on the 8th of May. Thank you. 8th of May, it's mental mastery for dog sports. And it'll be going through these kinds of things, but also particularly about how we can manage ourselves with our dogs in our training and competitive environments, and giving some tools and techniques, some quite specific things where we might be able to help ourselves to go through these things with our dogs. So yes, thank you. It's free, and if you want details, I put details, and I can put details in the chat at the bottom.
That'd be amazing. So Kat, again, she's going to be doing the talk on mental management for dog sports. If you are in dog sports, pick this up, check it out. It's completely free on the 8th of May.
8th of May.
At what time?
In the evening, 7 p.m. British time.
And just again, what you may not know, Kat has been incredibly successful in obedience, making up 2 obedience champion Australian Shepherds in obedience, and one has just recently broken history, or made history, I should say, by becoming the first and only Australian Shepherd female, or Australian Shepherd full stop, to qualify IGP3, which is the top level in that particular sport. And she recently competed at the national championship. So incredibly accomplished, and understands how to prepare mentally, compose herself, and execute, most importantly, in a competitive environment at the elite level of dog sport. So, mark my words, jump on that. It's completely free. Kat is really passionate about helping other people improve their mental management, and certainly for dog sports, it's her life's work. So check it out. Kat will share the link. Thank you, Kat, as always a pleasure. I hope you guys have enjoyed this conversation. Tomorrow, our session of day 3 of the Relabelling Reactivity Deep Dive is at 10 a.m. Sorry, put my teeth back in, with my good friend and student and Relabelling Reactivity team member, Lou Holmes, who's going to be talking about the benefits of nose work and for behavior modification, and specifically reactivity. So join me tomorrow, 10 a.m. It'll be live on live on YouTube, but it'll be posted across the relevant platforms. Check it out. Share it with people that you think are going to benefit. Share this conversation. If you pick this up retrospectively, tag people in it, let them know about what's going on this week. I'm super excited to get great information about reactivity. There is so much poor information about helping people overcome reactivity challenges and empowering people. So please let people know. Jump on Cat stuff if you're interested in your complete dog sports. Whatever you're doing this evening, enjoy your evening. Have a good one. And I hopefully see some of you tomorrow. Take care all.
Bye.